Hi, and welcome to sunny Sydney. Well, it's not quite sunny, it's pouring with rain. I'm Paul Rushworth-Brown, host of Down Under Interviews, and I'm here with a very interesting author, Carla Stockton, who's written a very interesting book that I'm really excited to find out about. It's called Too Much of Nothing, Notes on Feminism, Identity, and Womanhood. Welcome to the show, Carla.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is a
So,
pleasure.
yeah. So you're in the US, I'm in Australia, so we finally got together. So tell me, to me, it sounds like a pretty important book. What was the message that? What was the original message that you wanted to tell about the book, and why did you write it?
It's an interesting question because I didn't start out to write this book. What I thought when I finished, I went back to school at a very old age and got an MFA. And my MFA thesis was a compendium of stories about my immigrant family. And I thought my first book would be some kind of tribute to that family. And when the people in my committee read it, they said, your voice is really most interesting when you are in the picture, when you're one of the characters. So I went back and started rethinking the whole thing and realized that I'm at an age and a place where I have accumulated expertise and experience that can be helpful to others, particularly to women. I grew up through the 50s, 60s, and 70s, times of great upheaval, especially for women. And I've watched things change and stay the same. And it seemed to me that though my experience is universal, I mean, I'm absolutely not unique. My voice is. And that I had a story to tell that had life lessons to share for people to take what they will from and to learn from.
It's a group of vignettes put together, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So it starts with your mother leaving war-torn Europe. Is that correct?
Yes, that
Okay,
is
so
correct.
tell us about her.
My mother was 16 when her family left Europe, not because they wanted to, but because if they didn't, they would die. And many of their family members died because they didn't get out. My grandfather had the foresight to prepare. They left, and leaving was not her choice. It was nobody's choice. They loved where they were. My grandmother had a big house. She loved throwing parties for her family. They all played music and they would get together and make music. They were poets. They would read poetry to one another. Leaving was not in their game plan, except it became necessary. And I don't think my mother ever really, I don't think she ever really reconciled what had happened to her. It never quite made sense to her.
So in your vignettes that you've written, what was the most difficult one to write, do you think?
There were a few that were very difficult to write. Writing about one of my first music teachers. I took guitar from her, and I also was her babysitter. And I spent a lot of time with her kids. A woman who was battered. that one was difficult to write about.
Mm.
Writing about a friend of mine who underwent a terrible experience with an abortion, that was difficult. Writing about my mother, my own marriage, whatever, those were easier because there was a healing process that went through and they were my pain. And so I was able to deal with them forthrightly and with acceptance. I had already learned to accept whatever I had been through, but it had been years since I had thought about some of the things that some of my friends had gone through. And so those were more difficult.
And then you're heavily involved in the 1960s feminist movement. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's a major vignette in the novel, isn't it?
It is. And one of the things that's interesting for me about it is that I never considered myself a feminist in the 60s. In fact, I fought it. What was feminism? It was burning your bra. I didn't need to burn my bra. I didn't wear one. What was feminism? It was we're going to be better than anybody. We're going to take over the world. But I was, in every sense of the word, a feminist, in that I believed I should be able to do whatever a man was able to do, and that I wanted us to have equal opportunity. And so I fought for it in my own way.
So that type of, obviously that type of thing is still going on. So during that time, were you sort of like involved in, holding the placard and marching and that type of thing?
No, it's interesting because I was never much of a joiner.
Right.
I would do things on the side. I'll give you an example. I applied for a job in 1973. It was a job that I had been doing for 4 years at Columbia as an undergraduate. I had been writing stories about successful teachers and students who had gone on to do other things beyond school. And we would send these stories to hometown newspapers. And we moved to California, and at the university where my husband was enrolled, there was a job posted, exactly the same job. And I applied for it. And I had 3 interviews. And at the final interview, the man who was interviewing the finalists leaned across the desk and he said, the truth is, you should have this job because you are highly qualified. But you know what? We need a man to do it. And I wasn't hired. And they got away with it. I made a big stink, but they got away with it. There was nothing you could do about it.
Yeah. Believe me, I've been there as well. Obviously not in that type of situation, but just that whole idea of power and as an individual, you don't have the power to fight it, and no matter what you do, I'm not going to go into the circumstance, but no matter what you do to sort of like fight those power brokers, you've got no chance.
That's right. Exactly.
Um,
And you have to know when it's worth fighting the unfightable fight, and when it's better to just walk away and say, okay, I'm going to do this another day in another way.
Yeah. So you're a quiet feminist. I like that. Quiet feminist.
I guess quiet. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I'm not a quiet person.
No. So you're a drama teacher. You were a drama teacher, and so from this young girl that emigrated to America, you ended up getting a degree. But I believe you were married first before you went to college, weren't you?
Well, actually, I was married and then I was not married and then I was married.
Right.
I went to college right out of high school, and it was not a fit for me. It was not a good fit. I ran away with somebody. We got married so that we could have a place to live because it was illegal to cohabitate. And we were afraid to break the rules. And then we separated, and I kind of wandered about for a couple of years. And then I went back to school.
Yeah.
Very seriously went back to school and got my degree. And then I met my husband at school.
I know that you mentioned that, as a teacher, you sort of like, I suppose, tried to not speak out, but tried to talk about how you felt about that whole sort of like feminist movement and that type of thing. These days, I mean, if I tried to do that, I'd be sacked because you're sort of like putting your ideological ideas onto students, and so we can't really do that. I don't know what it's like in Australia, but we can't really do that. Sorry, in America, but we can't really do that in Australia.
I've always taught literature and theater, so there's a great deal of freedom when you're talking about literature and theater to explore ideas without saying this is the right way to think or this is the wrong way to think, but let's explore ideas. So
Mm.
I always had a tremendous amount of freedom. I was very lucky. It's not always that way, but I was extraordinarily lucky in the people for whom I worked until I stopped being lucky, which is in the book too. I had a principal who would have allowed me to do almost anything because he knew that what we were doing was encouraging our kids to think for themselves. We were encouraging our kids to find themselves, and we weren't directing them. We weren't telling them how to think. We were simply giving them tools to think with. And so I had a great deal of autonomy. I teach now at the college level, and my ideas of feminism are not woke ideas. My ideas of even though I'm a rabid anti-racist, I'm a rabid integrationist. I can't talk about those things at all in the classroom because anything you say can be misinterpreted.
Yeah.
So again, I'm teaching a literature. I teach writing and literature, and in the writing and literature, what I try to do is say, here's what these authors are providing for you. Whether we're reading essays or we're reading literature, this is what authors are saying to you. You decide what you think about what they're saying, and then have discussions. And I am not sure that that will always be okay, but so far it has been. And again, I'm at Lehman College, which is part of the City University, and we do have, I think, more autonomy than some places offer their instructors.
Okay, so you teach drama and literature. How do you think being involved in teaching and education for so long has influenced your writing voice?
Ah, it's interesting. Well, I know what bores kids, and I know what bores readers, and I've always had my students read sophisticated literature. So reading, of course, is the best teacher for anybody who wants to be a writer, but learning to find the right voice to express the literature with my students, listening to what they're saying and listening to their ideas. I learn so much from my students,
Mm.
always. I think that's the main way they've helped me grow. But
Yep.
also, I have to say, and this is I can't even put an importance on it. It's so important. I get so much feedback from my former students. So much love,
Yeah.
and we all suffer from a certain amount of imposter anxiety, right? But then I talk to my students, and I'm like, oh, you got that from me? You think that about me?
Yeah.
It's very gratifying and validating.
So you've written some articles in The Guardian, in a number of other magazines. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Very different kinds of writing. In The Guardian, I wrote a piece. The piece that they actually paid me for was a piece about widows and the what happens to widows
Yeah.
from feminist perspective.
Yeah.
How widows are kind of thrown away and discarded in both British and American society. And then I wrote an article for the Toast that, as a result, none of my professors from my MFA program will talk to me anymore, because I said that there was sexism and ageism in my program.
Yeah.
That's an exaggeration. I should point out that I'm not being. I don't want to be too critical. Again, there'll be another blacklist.
I'm sure that wouldn't worry you though.
No, no. Truth is, it wouldn't. But then I did I have a friend who had recently married a man and moved to Israel. And it turned out that the man was the brother of Israel's most famous spy.
Mm.
And this man had a story to tell about how he was with the IDF and he was receiving the information from the spy
Mm-hmm.
at the time of the spy sending his messages from Syria. And because I was friends with this person, she asked if I would come and interview her husband, and we wrote a story together. I wrote the story
Yeah.
with him for Moment Magazine. What is interesting to me about that is that years later, I opened up an archive just to see the article, and it's a big banner about how this is the story that Sacha Baron Cohen is the star of on Netflix. And when I watched the series on Netflix, I realized a lot of the stuff that was in the article
Really?
in that, yeah.
Is that
But
right?
because, yeah, but because it was a, writer for hire,
Yeah.
Moment paid us very well.
Yeah.
Um, so they had the right to do that, but
Yeah.
it was kind of a heady moment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then as a result of that story, a producer that I knew, a Hollywood producer, his a relative had asked him to make a contact with a writer for a man who had survived the Munich Olympics.
Right.
And so I got to meet Dan Alon,
Yeah.
who was an Olympic fencer. And
Right.
we wrote his book about surviving the Munich Olympic
Yeah.
massacre in 1972.
Wow. Yeah.
And then for Guernica, actually, one of my favorite pieces that I wrote was a story about activism in the theater, and I got to interview some of the best playwrights in America at the time, and talk about some of the best theater out there. So that was a really exciting. It was called it's a roundtable
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah. I mean, very interesting. Like, but some tough topics. I mean, I think I would have difficulty writing writing about some of the topics that you write about.
I
Um,
find the more
sorry.
difficult, the better it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay. Um, I suppose. Yeah. My latest novel is sort of like has been a bit difficult. Um, it's
Also,
Outback Odyssey, and it's an allegorical novel that this won't be in the interview, by the way. It's an allegorical novel that gets Australians to face themselves with regard to colonisation and how non-Indigenous people have treated um, Indigenous people or First Nations people, and it delves right into how on the top layer, it's like it's just a like a historical fiction adventure romance story. But if you look underneath, it delves right into Aboriginal
you can
culture
see that.
and the
Yeah.
wisdom and tapestry of Aboriginal culture, and how and basically what it does is it gets people, and it does not necessarily just Australians, but gets people to sort of like look in the mirror about how over the years non-Indigenous people have treated these First Nations people in various countries.
All across the world.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, that's another story. Let's get back to you.
No, it's
So,
interesting because I just want to I want to just dovetail on that a bit because I find that very interesting, and I have ordered that book for exactly that reason. Joni and I were talking about it because one of the layers of my book that I'm working on is exactly that,
okay,
because the Dutch came and stole the land
yeah,
from the Native Americans, and that's part of the whole story,
yeah, right,
And then anyway,
yeah. I mean,
I totally get it.
whoever I talk to, or whatever interview I do, they always the interviewer always says, "Oh, yeah, yeah, it was exactly the same over here." So it
Yeah,
was a worldwide issue. I mean,
totally.
over here, First Nations people didn't even get the vote until 1967.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, and I suppose the backlash from it is that white Australians and the media, even though it's been in a number of Australian newspapers recently, the media for a long time, I mean, it only came out in June, but for a long time, the media wouldn't go near it because
Mm.
it asked too many questions and it touched on too many. Um, and Australia is such a conservative country. Anyway, enough about me.
But publishing can be very conservative. We had a very hard time publishing Munich Memoir because people didn't want to, even this was 2009, and already people did not want to publish anything that put the Palestinians in a bad light.
Yeah.
So yeah, publishing is a very, very narrow world.
Yeah.
It can be.
Okay, so um, quite a few times in your life you've had to start over, but also you've had to show quite a lot of resilience in some very, very difficult situations. Um, so you left a marriage. What gave you the courage to take those leaps and to sort of like say, yeah, I can do this?
I was just talking to a friend today about some of the things that we both children of the 60s, and we did things that people thought were, gutsy when we were in our late teens and 20s. And then I did that thing, which I suppose could be called gutsy. But I think what we were talking about is that in large part, we were really lost and broken. And a lot of what we were doing was foundering, looking for answers, looking for a way to make life make sense.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm not a good planner. I've done a very bad job of planning my final years. And so I know that I will struggle to the end because I have not planned it well. And at the time that I left, it wasn't that I planned, it's just that I got broken and I needed to leave to make sense of who I was.
Yeah. I mean, really, I suppose, from what I'm hearing, one of the main concepts that's coming out of it is that it's never too late to start again, is it?
It's never too late to start again.
Yeah.
It can be too late to succeed in the way that you might have envisioned success.
Yeah.
But then you learn that there are all different ways to define success.
Yeah. Okay, so a lot of people are talking about your novel or memoir novel as a must read. Okay, what could you? I mean, I think a lot of people looking at the title of the novel would say, "Oh, this is a novel for women," right?
Mm-hmm.
What can you say about the novel and about what's going to attract men?
Two things. One, if you read the reviews that I've had, and my favorite are the ones that the men are writing, they're very favorable. And I think, first of all, the kind of man who would even read this book is a man who is sensitive, a thinker, and who wants to understand the women with whom he interacts and is looking for insights. And I think that this book does provide insights into this is what we think. The other thing is that there's never a point, because I don't see it that way, where men are vilified in this book. I didn't leave my husband because he was a horrible man. I left because we were wrong for each other.
Yeah.
One of the things that I take issue with the Me Too movement, for example, is that young boys, young men, particularly adolescent boys, find it difficult to define who they are vis-a-vis women. How do I talk to them? What do I say? If I touch them on the shoulder, have I touched too much? I mean, I'm telling my 8-year-old grandson, well, you can't touch somebody without asking permission.
Yeah.
That makes me feel bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be perfectly honest with you. It took me 30 years to be a good man. I mean, I was never a bad man, but I suppose to grow where you can be sort of like sensitive and of course, in my job, I'm teaching, about different types of humanity and the destructive type of masculinity and that type of thing. And I think through education and we've still got a long way to go as a species, but I think through education we're on the right. Well, in Australia, I think we're on the right path. We teach about sort of like relationships, and we teach about finding that balance between being a sensitive man and being sort of like um, being just having that dangerous form of masculinity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's it. That's a key word, though, Paul. I think that balance is something that I think that's what we lack here in the United States to a great degree at this point is balance.
Yeah.
It's the weight is either one way or the other.
Yeah.
There's never a sense of, we're right
Yeah.
smack where we need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a like I think it's such an important topic, and that there's been sort of like ads on TV over here about fathers sort of like sort of like identifying to them how the things that they say and some of their actions can be detrimental to their sons,
Yeah,
teaching them the wrong way to be a man, the wrong
yeah.
type of masculinity. So I think all of that type of thing is really really important. Okay, so you spoke about your next novel. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as I said, it started out, I thought I was going to write a young adult novel about a young girl who is a stowaway on a boat that brought 23 Jewish immigrants, refugees from Brazil after the Portuguese retook the Recife area in Brazil, and reinstituted the Inquisition, which made it very difficult for Jews to live there. And I thought it'd be a really good way to tell a young woman's story. But as I got deeper into it, and I started reading a lot of Russell Shorthope, whose books I really like, they're history, but he has a flair for novelistic writing. Everything isn't always precisely correct, but I love his books. And
Yeah.
he builds a very visual picture of 17th and 18th century New York. And I then read his history of Amsterdam, which is really interesting to read in context of that. Anyway, I started doing this research, as I said earlier, that I realized these stories that I'm reading are the stories of my own people, and that I can tell their stories in this timeless story of people who, I mean, the story of these people in the Pernambuco area of Brazil, in Recife. um, they had been in Lisbon and Spain. They'd been in the Iberian Peninsula and they'd been dispersed, and some had gone to Istanbul. There was a huge group that went to Istanbul, and there were others who went to the Pale of Settlement in Europe, Eastern Europe, what became the Pale of Settlement. And some went to England and were then forced out of England, and they had wandered around the world and ended up in this little place in Recife, which 20 years later was retaken by the Inquisition. So then they had to leave. So it seemed like, I mean, if you look at what happened in Europe, for example, in 1939, where especially in some place like Austria, where there was the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which provided absolute tolerance for everybody. They didn't, in the absence of patriotism, there was tolerance for everybody. So there was comfort, and then suddenly there wasn't.
Mm.
And so people left, and
Yeah.
it's that story. It gets told over and over. The gypsies. I mean, it's a story that gets told over and over. Look at the way in which on this continent we talked about indigenous people. How many times were the indigenous people promised, well, you can stay here and you'll be safe and you'll have prosperity and everything will be fine, and then within the next 20 years they're being forced out again and
Yeah.
having to escape.
Yeah.
It's a universal story. So that's what I'm writing about.
Yeah.
But I'm doing it through the eyes of one family is a Dutch family living in the Catskill Mountains of upstate New York, in the 17th century. And then this other character comes up from Brazil,
Yeah.
and they become a family.
Wonderful. 3 words to describe the book, or the first 3 words that come to your mind. If somebody picks up the book, what 3 words are going to be on the back of it?
Difficult to write, funny, surprising.
Okay. All right. Well, Carla, it's been absolutely wonderful having you on the show.
Oh, it's
Um,
been great being here. You're wonderful.
oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And look, I think it's to me it sounds like a novel that everybody should read.
Thank you.
And I'm definitely going to read it.
Cool. Let me know what you thought. I want to review.
Yeah,
from
because
you.
To be honest with you, I don't do a lot. Obviously, because I'm so busy, I don't do a lot of reading. But this is definitely one that I'd like to pick up and have a squiz at.
Your book is part of my research, so we'll swap reviews.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Lovely to
Bye-bye.
meet you, Carla.
Lovely to meet you, Paul. Thank you.
Bye bye.